This evening, we're going to be focusing on stopping settlements, building Palestinian society, seizing the moment for peace. You know, the major elements of a just two-state solution to the conflict are well known, and equally well known are the considerable challenges to achieving it. Divisions in Palestinian leadership, a new Israeli leadership that has not committed itself clearly to the two-state solution. There's the cycle of violence, there's the questions of addressing refugees, sharing Jerusalem, the root of the separation wall, a security barrier, the presence of settlements. Tonight, we're going to have an opportunity to look at the opportunities and challenges for peace at this time, and also at the question of settlements. I'll introduce both of our speakers now so that we won't have an interruption in the flow of their talk, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. Hagit Ofran is the director of the Settlement Watch Project of the Israeli Peace Now movement. Widely recognized as Israel's foremost expert on the full range of issues related to West Bank settlement, and also as a leading expert on settlement-related developments in East Jerusalem. She reports on settlement construction and planning trends, and she is considered a primary resource on this topic. Ms. Ofran takes part regularly in public forums and private meetings, serving as a highly sought-after resource for Israeli politicians and analysts, the diplomatic community, international media organizations, and first and foremost, the Israeli public. She comes from a religiously observant family and is the great-granddaughter of one of Israel's most famous philosophers, Yesod Yahu Leibowitz. She formerly worked for the Geneva Initiative and was Yossi Beilein's personal assistant when he was Minister of Justice. She lives in Jerusalem and received her BA in Jewish History from Hebrew University. We are very delighted to have you with us this evening. Of course, she will be focusing on the question of settlement and the state of play there. We're also delighted to have with us Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, who's a Palestinian democracy activist, medical doctor. In fact, he's the founder of the Union of Palestinian Medical Relief Committees, a non-governmental organization that provides health care and related services in the West Bank and Gaza. Dr. Barghouti was a candidate for president in the 2005 election of the Palestinian Authority. He came second with almost 20% of the vote. In the 2006 legislative election, Dr. Barghouti led the Independent Palestinian List, a coalition of independent and non-governmental organization members. The list promised to fight corruption and nepotism and to provide a truly democratic and independent third way for the large majority, the silent majority, and underrepresented Palestinian voters who favored the autonomy and corruption of Palestinian and its approach, who favored neither the autocracy and corruption of the governing Fatah party nor the fundamentalism of Hamas. Independent Palestine won nearly 3% of the vote, and Dr. Barghouti was elected to a seat on the Palestinian Legislative Council. He also served as Minister of Information in the short-lived Palestinian Unity government of March through June of 2007. Dr. Barghouti, we're delighted to have you with us this evening. Dr. Barghouti will be addressing the wider range of sort of opportunities and challenges at this moment for peace. So let's begin our evening. Hagit Ofran, please tell us about settlement. And I think you have a PowerPoint for us as well. And don't forget to write your questions on cards.
So hi, myself. I'm coming from Israel. I'm Israeli Jewish, and I'm coming from a group, a movement that is trying to advocate for peace already for 30 years. And we set up this project of monitoring settlements. And I will try to tell you a little why I was so about settlements and why do we think it's an essential issue. And also, I've been asked to speak also a little about Jerusalem, and I'm trying here to do it in 20 minutes. something which is very hard to read, but I will try. So, background in general, you see the map of Israel as it was before 67, all the white part was Israel, and then came the 67 war, and Israel occupied all the occupied territory, the West Bank, and other places. We'll focus now on the West Bank. And as you know, it's a very important place for Jews. The West Bank is part of our homeland. We feel connections to the land of the West Bank. And also, in terms of security of Israel, many people believe, and still believe, that we need to hold more land in order to secure ourselves. So we decided to build many settlements in the West Bank. However, Israel never annexed the occupied territory as part of Israel. And why didn't we do that? What do you think about it? The reason was that in 67, we had already Palestinian population living there. And if we want to be a Jewish democratic state and to annex more land, we would have to annex also the people and give them full civil rights. And this would mean for the Jewish people, for the Israeli state, to actually have a binational state and the Zionist idea of establishment of the Jewish state will not be accomplished anymore. So this is why we didn't annex. However, we did build a lot of settlements in the West Bank, and I'm stopping here at 93, because in 93, as you all know, we had the Oslo process, and it was very optimistic day. I remember I was at my army service, and I was in a course, and we stopped the course to see the historical moments. And we were going to this club in the base of the soldiers' club to watch with this small television. You need to hit every other minute to see the historical moments. And I remember feeling finally we're making peace. Now we're going to end the occupation. We're going to evacuate the settlement. Everybody's happy. As you know, it wasn't the case. And one important thing to know about Oslo. The Oslo process was based on interim measures, saying we cannot, that's what Rabin thought at the time, we cannot go for the end game now, so we need to move step by step. Step by step means let them build their state, Palestinian Authority, leave the settlement issue, Jerusalem issue to the end game, and in 5 years we get a final status agreement. This did not work. And because we left all the settlements, we had to arrange it in a way that Israel still controls the West Bank, but the Palestinians have some kind of control also. So you have area A and B under Palestinian control, and all the rest, 60% of the West Bank under Israeli control, in order to hold for the settlement. And ever since, Israel continued to bid and bid in settlements. This is a graph of the number of settlers. And if you look at the total number of settlers, you see that the majority of the settlers came to the settlement after Oslo. So, this was because we went for interim agreements. The way Rabin was assassinated, he didn't complete the talks. We had Netanyahu as Prime Minister, who did not want to go for the end game, and lots of things that happened. But meanwhile, nobody ever really stopped the settlement activities. And what was the message for the Palestinians? The Palestinians who chose to talk to the Israelis because they believe that by negotiations they can get something, they go. And after that, you're not getting anywhere. You're getting your autonomy or your authority to deal with the sewage system with municipalities, but that's it. And all the rest is closed, and the settlements go on growing. And I want to mention another thing. For the Israelis and the Israeli public, the main issue, also today, and the most important thing is Israel security. And I know sometimes people find it awkward that the most powerful country in the Middle East feels threatened all the time believe that if we leave it, they will shoot us, because we don't believe that there is a partner on the other side to go with us. So I'm putting this slide on here just to show you what happened also from the Israeli perspective. We had the first intifada. People were hurt, were killed, 150 people in the first intifada, but then after Oslo, before the second intifada, we had even more casualties. So people said, this is not peace. For us, peace was stopping shooting. And of course, it wasn't peace because it wasn't completed. And you cannot mention numbers without, talking, at least the numbers also, that it wasn't one-sided. Okay, so we got to a situation now in 2008 where we have almost 280 or 90,000 settlers, and if you add also, and you should, add the East Jerusalem settlers, it's another 190,000. And adding to that, it will be another 100 illegal outposts, and I'm not going to get into all the details of that, but in order to protect all of this, because we had the horrible attacks, we need roadblocks and checkpoints. And I just want to mention that most of the roadblocks and checkpoints are not dividing between Israel and the Palestinian territories, but inside the Palestinian territories. So it's not only meant to protect Israel, but also mainly to protect Israeli settlements and the movement of settlers and the road. And adding to this, the security barrier, separation barrier, whatever you want to call it, it's not only between Israel and Palestine, it also has settlements that are inside it. If you take the Green Line, had it been on the Green Line, it would have been less than half long than it is. Now, it's a very expensive thing, this fence. It's not just a fence. For example, this is how it looks like. You have a road, so it's paving a road, and in this case, we have to cut in the mountain, and then you have the dirt road for the footprints, and then the fence with the electronic, radar or anything, and then another footprint, another. So it's a huge, huge enterprise. Israel invested a lot in it. And also, we built special roads for Palestinians, because when we cut into the West Bank with the fence, we need to build what we call fabric of life roads. I'll skip the story about the outpost because it's, I have no time. So because of that, because of the fact that all the time since Oslo, we had ongoing construction. The freeze is, is the elementary thing in order to be able to rebuild trust between two sides, and of course to prevent the no return point that we might get to with the two-state solution. So, but I believe there is a solution. It is still feasible. It's just I put three maps. This is the situation today in terms of settlement. If Israel would stick to the barrier, we'll get to this map, and this is not a solution because East Jerusalem is not part of the Palestinian state, and it's not a viable state with all those, enclaves or balloons of the Israeli control. But there is a possible agreement, which I know today, the only, it's like a blueprint or a suggestion for an agreement, looks more or less like this, and of course I'm not saying that this should be an agreement, it's a Geneva Initiative line, but you see that if Israel wants to annex anything, we will have to give back something in return from Israeli land. But let's go now to speak a little about Jerusalem, and here you see the holy places, Haram al-Sharif, and about Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem the way it was before 67, and you see the old city is in the Jordanian side. And for Israelis, because the holy places and the old city was very important, it's still a symbol for the Jewish people, it's also a symbol for the Palestinian people. And it was very important, so it's a kind of trauma that for 19 years, since 48 to 67, we did not have the old city. And when in 67 we occupied all the territories, and some people in Israel might say we liberated it, we made sure that Jerusalem would be united, and we set this line, a new municipal border, annexing a lot of land around Jerusalem. And these lands were not empty. They had almost 70,000 Palestinians that were annexed to Israel, and they got residentship. That means they are residents of Israel, but they're not citizens. So they cannot vote for the Knesset, and they don't have Israeli passport. They do have, they can work in Israel, they pay taxes, they get services, they can even vote for the municipality of Jerusalem. Ever since, that's the numbers in 67. Today, the numbers are a little different, much bigger. And Israel confiscated 1/3 of the occupied territory of Jerusalem and built the settlement in East Jerusalem. And this is a lot of construction. As I said, 190,000 Israelis in the settlement in East Jerusalem. And adding to that, the barrier is here in purple. You see that most of it is more or less on the line of the municipal border, which was set up in 67, and actually cuts through Palestinian neighborhoods. And also you can see the settlement blocks that are around Jerusalem, like here in the east, Ma'ale Adumim, or in the northwest, in Yivaseh. But in Jerusalem, it's very important to mention, there was never a real integration of the two populations, of the Jewish and the Palestinian populations. No real unification of Jerusalem. And just one simple example. This is a map of the Israeli Jewish transportation, and this is a map of East Jerusalem. Now, it's not segregation. Both societies can take the other side's bus. That's okay. The only thing is that they don't have anything to do. I mean, Jewish Israelis don't go to the Palestinian neighborhoods in East Jerusalem because we don't have anything to look for there. It was never integrated. And if you come to Jerusalem, you take a look, you see the differences between the two kinds of neighborhoods. So, when President Clinton presented his principles for peace agreement, in Jerusalem he said that it should be based on where the Palestinians live, will be Palestinians, where Jews, the Israeli live, would be Israel, and here it is on the map. You see this is the current situation, but that's like more or less the suggestion of Clinton. And now the settlers know that this is the solution that is coming up. And if they want to prevent it, what they want to do is to mix the two societies, to add Jews, bring Jews to live in Palestinian neighborhoods, especially around the old city. And here I come to what the government is now doing. And this is the picture I took in Jerusalem from one of the electricity boards in the city. why did I take this picture? Look what you see. You see the old city here. And then if you look to the east, suddenly everything here is in green. You don't see the details of the surrounding East Jerusalem. Now I know it's a little demagogic what I'm doing now, because it is, some of the green areas is green, also in fact, if you go and see it. But they worked on it a little to make it more green. I see it as a Freudianic, that you can see what they have in mind in terms of the surrounding of the old city. We don't want to see, or don't want to take into consideration the Palestinian society who is around it. We're trying to make domination of the Israelis. And this is a quote from a decision, governmental decision in 2005. It was Sharon government to allocate 60 million and another 10 from the Ministry of Tourism every year to the next 8 years in order to bolster Jerusalem's status as the capital of the state of Israel. Now this plan was never published until a few weeks ago by the New York Times, and actually we found, we got the paper of this plan. This is a map that is taken from the governmental plan, and it shows the boundaries of the parks that Israel is investing now around the old city. And if you take a closer look into it, you see what the consequences are. But it's important for me to mention that the idea of developing parks around the old city and renovating sites is a very important idea. I live in Jerusalem. I love Jerusalem. I want it to be open and developed as historical, etc. But this plan is meant to make it Jewish developed, and it has many consequences. One consequence is that if it really comes to affect, it might prevent the two-state solution, because two-state solution must have compromise in Jerusalem. And why? Because if you take the map, you see that here in the east, there is another part which is not even close to the city. It's the Mount Copu east part. And if you look, you go and zoom out, you see it's actually in order to connect with the E1 plan that is meant to make continuity between Ma'ale Adumim settlement, which is east of Jerusalem, actually to prevent the possibility of East Jerusalem as the capital, and that's the E1 plan you see in the middle of the West Bank. The second thing that is very horrible or dangerous about it is that they use the religious element as a means to control, and that's a very dangerous thing to do. For instance, Mount Olivet, I'm sure you're all familiar with the place as a holy place for the Christians, and it's also holy for the Jews. Just in 2 minutes I'll finish. That's the Jewish cemetery, the picture of the Jewish cemetery. And they're investing a lot in bringing more Jews to visit there, but not only to visit, but also to pray. And if we go and pray there, we will never be able to give it up. It's about religion where we cannot compromise. Or using archaeology. This is the one excavation, and there are a lot of tunneling going underneath now. It's a great thing to excavate, but if you do it without coordination with the Palestinians, it might cause problems. And this is a caricature that I saw just after the attacks on Gaza. That all the world is looking into the tunnels of Gaza, while behind its back, the towns under Al-Aqsa Mosque are being paved. Now, I never met still a Muslim that is not Palestinian Muslim and is not sure, confident that Israel is staying under Al-Aqsa Mosque. I don't know if it's true. I think it's not, but we're very close to it, and that's the fundamental fears of many, many people. And another very important element that is dangerous about this plan is the fact that it's involved with settlements, and all those TARs are those settlements that the secular organization puts with support of the Israeli government inside Palestinian neighborhoods. And this is how it looks like. For instance, that's the building over here. You see the flag of Israel. It's on Mount Olive in Atul. 12 Jewish families live there. And here is a compound in Ras El Amud. Now they're doubling it also. And here, and you see that there is always a guard and cameras and a flag of Israel in the middle of Palestinian neighborhood. So, but still, I believe and I know that there is a possible solution or compromise that is still possible on the basis of the Clinton ideas. For instance, the old city could be a holy place and divided for sovereignty, and special arrangements for the Jewish cemetery that you see here, which is Mount Olive. I believe it is still possible, and I thank you for listening.
I need to say a couple of things. One is I apologize for the short time that we had available. That analysis was clear, it was compelling, it's very clear to me that you are an expert on the substance. And what was remarkable to me is your spirit of hope that you shared with us at the end, that peace still remains possible despite all of the obstacles, particularly the obstacles around settlement. Hagit Ofran, thank you very much for your analysis. Mustafa Barghouti will talk to us about the opportunities and the challenges that face us at this moment in history. Dr. Barghouti.
Well, good evening to everybody. And thank you for hosting me. I was not on your program, so I was added, and I thank you for that. My point today is that I think we are gathering today after a very important development that took place recently, and that is the speech of President Obama, which probably gave many people some hope that there will be change. It definitely gave me a lot of good impression. And I think what was important about what President Obama said is that it represented some kind of a change, turning point, I might say. What was quite important is that finally we had an American president in office who could see the human face of the Palestinian people. And I think his speech touched many people because it spoke about Palestinians as equal human beings, entitled to a homeland of their own, entitled to dignity and opportunity. I think the speech was quite firm on the issue of settlements, that there should be immediate freeze of settlements, and on the right of Palestinians to have their own state. But there was a very important point in the speech, which is that it does not speak about Palestinians and Palestinian problem as if it started in 1967. It spoke about the Palestinian problem that started in 1948 and related very clearly to the issue of refugees and their rights. And I think that is an issue that cannot be omitted. And he spoke about the suffering of the Palestinian people for the last 50 years, or more than 60 years. That is also a very important development. He clearly spoke about humiliation that is related to occupation, and he spoke about the suffering of people of Gaza. That is a completely new language. And I was especially touched by the fact that he compared or created a comparison between the suffering of the Palestinian people and that of Americans of African origin, as well as the people of South Africa. I think he stopped a little bit short from saying what President Carter said, that there is a system of apartheid there. So these were impressive words. You might not agree with everything that President Obama said, but definitely these things represent a serious change. I definitely share with him a lot of the values that he expressed in his speech. The values for non-violence, respect of human rights, democracy, dialogue instead of confrontation, and firm commitment to peace, as well as building institutions. But also there was something special about what he said, in the sense that admitting the suffering of the Jewish people during the Holocaust, and in other times, I guess, which he didn't mention, like the pogroms of Russia or the Inquisition time of Spain, does not, if you admit that, doesn't mean you don't admit the suffering of the Palestinian people. And my point has always been that if you speak about the rights of the Palestinian people, you're not negating actually the suffering of Jewish people in the Holocaust. On the contrary, I personally believe that if the victims of the Holocaust somehow will come back to life, I am sure they will be on the side of the Palestinian people, because they will be on the side of justice. And those who suffered from the Holocaust are not the ones who are oppressing the Palestinians today. These are different people. So I think these are very important issues to look at if we want to look into the future. And I say that because with such a good speech, we still cannot ignore the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is that we have the worst, most racist, and most extreme government in the history of Israel, with Netanyahu and Lieberman in office, and Barak covering up for them, and an absence of a strong or real peace movement in Israel. We are witnessing a very dangerous situation, because the policy of Netanyahu is threatening, and the policy of the Israeli government will threaten the potential and possibility of achieving peace and achieving a solution. And here I want to elaborate on a few things. First of all, on the issue of settlements, I want to alert you to two particular myths that could be used in the future. The first myth is about trying to divert the attention from the issue of settlements to the settlement outposts. And here I think it was clearly mentioned, we're talking about the settlements. 122 or 126 settlements which have 500,000 or 467,000 illegal settlers. And I don't differentiate here between settlements in East Jerusalem or settlements in the West Bank, because in both cases they are in occupied territories, and in both cases they are illegal. And the presence of any settler in the occupied territories is illegal. So you cannot differentiate between the settlements in Jerusalem or the settlements in the West Bank just because Israel decided to annex East Jerusalem, which is another illegal act. I think international law here is very clear, and international law is very obvious. it says that no country that is occupying another country has the right to settle its people in the occupied territories or change the facts on the ground. And the most recent resolution of the International Court of Justice was very clear. It said bluntly that the settlements are illegal, the changes in East Jerusalem are illegal and have to be reversed, as well as the wall. I don't know why you call it a barrier, it's a wall, and the wall itself is illegal and has to be removed. And I don't think we can here pick and choose when it comes to international law. Either we accept it or we don't accept it. The second point is about the outposts. The worry here is that, I don't know how many outposts we have now, about 106, something like that. They are saying that out of these 106 posts, which include only 4,000 settlers, some of those 2022 are illegal, and illegal by Israeli government standards, of course. And then there will be an emphasis on removing some of these outposts, let's say 7 or 8, and everybody will be busy with that, without recognizing the main problem, which is the presence of the main settlement. That is one of the myths that one has to be careful about. The second myth is about the issue of natural growth in settlements. And natural growth here is going to be used as an excuse for not tackling the issue of settlements. And of course, that is unacceptable, because the fact that illegal structures grow does not make them legal. And one has also to ask the question here is whether we are applying the same standard to Palestinians and Israelis, and why Palestinians in East Jerusalem are prevented from having permissions to build their own houses, and that's why about 60,000 of them are threatened to lose their homes because they want to build these parks and destroy all the houses in Silwan and in Sheikh Jarrah and in many other places. These are very serious issues, and one has to be alert to them. But the second major problem with the Israeli government is that it is refusing to negotiate. The basic program of this government says that the issue of Jerusalem will not be put on the table. As a matter of fact, the previous government fell apart because of the issue of Jerusalem. And Netanyahu has made commitment to Shah's party that he will not allow the discussion of the issue of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is not for discussion. Of course, the issue of Palestinian refugees and the right to return is not for discussion, not only for this government, but also for the previous government, which used to say not a single refugee will be allowed back. So the issue of refugees is also not for discussion. The issue of settlements obviously is not for discussion. And the principle of having a state, a Palestinian state, and two-state solution is still rejected by this government. So let's go back. Also, agreement spoke about final status issues, and final status issues are Jerusalem, borders and settlements, the issue of water, the issue of refugees, and the issue of Palestinian statehood. If all these issues are not for discussion, then what are the negotiations going to be about? That is, in my opinion, the main problem. And the issue we see here is the problem of nothing will be left from Oslo or the roadmap. Practically, the continuation of such Israeli policy will only mean one thing, which is the elimination of the possibility of the establishment of an independent Palestinian sovereign state. And while we appreciate what President Obama said, we have to be clear about the fact that he is definitely the last American president who still has a chance to deal with the possibility of two-state solution. And that option of two-state solution is simply vanishing. And without immediate and clear American pressure on the Israeli government, we cannot see a change of the situation. And what we could see is another cycle of a peace process being a substitute to achieving peace. We have lost already 18 years since Madrid process started. We've lost 16 years since Oslo Agreement was signed, and during this whole period, settlement growth does not stop for a moment. As was described to you, the growth of settlement was even harsher and faster and more after the signing of the peace agreement. That's why I think everybody is allergic to the idea of having yet another process that becomes nothing but a cover for the continuation of settlement building and the destruction of the possibility of peace. I say this and conclude that Israel is the one, of course, who can decide. But it has to be clear that the two-state option is not going to be accepted. And when I say two-state, I mean a real state, not a self-governing authority which functions as a security sub-agent for Israel. When I say a state, I mean a state with East Jerusalem as its capital, a state that controls its borders, controls its airspace, controls its export and import. If that is not going to be the case, then we are doomed to face one single opportunity, one other final possibility, and that is one-state solution. But whether we move in that direction or the other, the reality on the ground has been a reality that is very alarming. In a most recent report of the World Bank, which was published, I think, 3 weeks ago, it said that Israel is controlling 80% of the water resources in the West Bank. That report confirms what we see on the ground, where Palestinians are allowed to use no more than 50 cubic meters of water per capita per year, while Israeli illegal settlers can use up to 2,400, 42 times more than Palestinians. In reality, the GDP per capita in Israel today is $26,000, while the GDP per capita for Palestinians is around $1,000. Yet, we are obliged to buy products at Israeli market price because of existing agreements. And more than that, when we have to buy our water from Israel, we have to pay double the price that Israelis pay. 5 shekels per unit instead of 2.4 shekels per unit for Israelis. The same applies to electricity. And there are a number of roads already inside the West Bank, major roads, which are segregated in the sense that Palestinians are not allowed to use these roads, and if they are caught driving or walking on them, they will be sentenced to a number of months in jail. That is segregation. That never happened even during the time of apartheid in South Africa. I once hosted a friend of mine who's a Jewish minister, used to be a Jewish minister in the South African government. His name is Ron Cassius. And when we spoke together in front of the wall in Bethlehem, he said, don't call it apartheid because you would be insulting apartheid to these people. Much of what is happening is actually worse than what was happening in South Africa. So, the challenge here is for Israel too. In reality, it's not about an apartheid that could happen. Apartheid is already there. And one cannot deny it. And that's why, whether we speak about two states or we speak about one state, at the end of the day, one has to be clear that there can be no justice, no peace, if apartheid continues. And that's why I see the struggle, a joint struggle here for Palestinians and Israelis about ending this apartheid system, because there is nothing to be proud about in having apartheid in the 21st century. And there is nothing to be proud about for any Israeli to be living in a country that is imposing apartheid on the ground. Much was said about other challenges that face us, but I have been advocating, like many other Palestinians, the principle of nonviolent struggle. And that's what we have been doing and engaging in during the last years against the wall against land confiscation and against settlement building. But if you want to support nonviolent struggle of Palestinians, which obviously President Obama is agreeable with, one has to also put pressure to stop the severe violence that is practiced by Israel against nonviolent demonstrations. Just 2 days ago, one more person was killed because he was peacefully demonstrating in Ne'im. He was a father of 34 years old. This is the fifth person that is killed in the village of Ne'im, including 2 children, in peaceful nonviolent demonstrations. The same applies to Bil'im, the same applies to many other things that are happening everywhere in the occupied territories. The third point, which I think is of great importance, is about the future. We don't want, as Palestinians, only to have a Palestinian state. We don't just want to have a state. We want to have a democratic state. A state where human rights are respected, where democratic rights are respected. And that's why when we speak about building institutions of the future Palestinian state, it has to be clear that building institutions does not only mean building a security apparatus. And it does not make sense at all to have 35% of the budget of the Palestinian Authority spent on security structures, while what is spent on agriculture is less than 1%, only 0.7%, and what is spent on culture is only 0.1%. That is unacceptable, and that's why when we speak about building a future state, it has to be a state that cares about its own people. It has to be a state that builds health systems, educational systems, and judiciary structures. It has to be a government and a state that serves the interests of its own people, and not just a security sub-agent for an occupying authority that is refusing to leave occupation. There are a lot of things and challenges to talk about. And one of them is, of course, Palestinian internal unity. And I personally brokered the first plenary agreement between the different Palestinian groups. And I believe the national unity government would have worked if it wasn't for the siege and embargo that was put around the Palestinian government. And I still believe that in the future we can have differences. All countries have differences. All countries have parties. It is just natural to have pluralistic different views. What must be the basis of resolving our differences has to be a democratic system. Because at the end of the day, I believe peace will not happen unless it is concluded between 2 democracies, and not an agreement that is imposed from one side on the other and enforced from one side on the other, just because one side is strong and the other side is weak. At the end of the day, I would like to say that depending on how much pressure will be put on Israel, we could see an evolution towards a 2-state solution. But if that does not happen soon, and if Netanyahu and his government are allowed to maneuver away from the possibility of immediate solution, we could see the vanishing of that possibility of 2-state solution. But whether it is this or that, I can promise you one thing, that we, the Palestinians, who remain in Palestine, does not leave, and that's why there is a problem with the Zionist project, are not going to leave. And we, the Palestinians, will never, ever accept neither to be slaves of occupation nor slaves of apartheid. Thank you.
Dr. Barghouti, thank you. I think you can see now why he was such a credible candidate for president. He's a passionate spokesperson for the Palestinian people and passionate about seeking a just 2-state solution. And I was particularly moved by your talking about the joint struggle by Israelis and Palestinians for a just peace, a nonviolent struggle. Now time for some of your questions. And that's fine. We probably won't get them all, but they can keep bringing them up. And I'll get to as many of them as we can. I will switch us back to talk about settlements for a moment. So, Hagit, you brace yourself for some settlement questions. Do you understand President Obama's settlement freeze to include no new construction, like, for example, in existing settlements like Ma'awiin, and also what is being done to actually try to, within Israeli society and locally, to try to stop the expansion and building of settlements?
I can indicate that Obama meant what he said. Settlement stop. And the settlement is no construction in any settlement, including in Jerusalem, and that's clear, and that's how it should be. So, of course, it has more to talk about what will be the consequences. But I think a very important consequences already happening is that finally in Israel we're getting back to the debate, because for 8 years there was no debate in Israel. We had unity government, and the Bush administration made it seem that everything is okay. So the peace camp in Israel is trying to advocate against, but in the expansion, we were like, what do you want? Even the Americans said us, so what's the problem? So I believe that this time, and I hope that this time it is serious, that they will mean that what the administration means what they say. And I forgot the second question, but what are we doing? We're doing our best, but I think in many ways the peace camp in Israel did win. That's the optimistic side. In the mind of the Israeli public. Most of the Israelis are not interested in the settlement anymore. They're ready to give it up, and we saw it in the disengagement from Gaza, which was unilateral, to the hands of Hamas and everything, but the Israeli public went for it. Where do we lose again and again? We lose on the ground, because such as this and this, and the political power they have, and on the fact that Israelis do not believe, so we have Palestinians that will agree to accept us, and what they say to me all the time, if we leave the West Bank, they will shoot us the way they did in Gaza. There's no solution, so that's it.
Thank you for a forthright answer to difficult questions. We'll switch to Dr. Barghouti now. The several questions clustered around Palestinian unity government, and these are the questions that are settlement we're asking. Will the Palestinians reunify themselves in order to be a stronger partner for peace? Is a unity government with Hamas possible? And if there is no peace in 4 years, will that mean that Hamas will simply grow stronger and stronger, both within Gaza as well as in the West Bank?
Well, first of all, I want to elaborate on the issue of Israel left Gaza. They never left Gaza. And the fact that Gaza is 5%, I want somebody to explain to me, if there are occupied territories and you leave 5% of the occupied territories and keep occupation in 95%, why should the Palestinians be happy and not continue to struggle? Just because you left 5% of the occupied territories? Because it's not sustainable occupation there? It makes no sense. Dividing the Palestinians into Gaza and West Bank is unacceptable, because these are all occupied territories. But nevertheless, the question is, did Israel really leave Gaza? No. Or Gaza is still under occupation, but under a different form of occupation that is more suitable for occupiers. It's digital occupation, if I might call it. Because Israel continues to control the airspace, nobody can deny that. Israeli planes scan Gaza around the clock, and they have missiles. When they like, they can shoot missiles. Second, Israel controls all the borders. That's why nothing can get into Gaza. Even after the terrible war in Gaza, which left 25,000 houses demolished and destroyed and killed 1,400 people, including 400 children. Even after that, the siege is still continuing. That's why, although they got up a lot of millions of dollars which have been shared, not a single house has been repaired so far because Israel is not allowing a single sack of cement or piece of glass enter Gaza. Third, Israel is still controlling the sea around Gaza. That's why fishermen cannot fish deeper than 4 miles into the sea. And if they dare to go deep to fish, they will be shot at. So to say that Israel left Gaza is not true. Israel never left Gaza. Gaza is still occupied, but in a different way. And that's an issue that has to be clear because you frequently hear this argument by Israeli spokesperson about the situation there. The second issue is about Palestinian unity. I believe that at least the group I belong to has been advocating unified leadership for Palestinians for a long time. Why? Because in a national liberation movement, we cannot have each party deciding the policy on its own. Whether we are talking about the form of struggle that should be followed, or whether we are talking about the type of negotiations that should take place. What we need is unified leadership, and that unified leadership should include everybody. And Hamas, as President Obama said, I hope you noticed that thing in his speech, he said they represent a certain part of the Palestinian community. It doesn't give them the right to dominate or monopolize the decision-making process, but it doesn't give anybody else that right. I personally believe that the best way is to have unified leadership, to have a unity interim government, to prepare for elections, but one has to then accept the results of elections. Today everybody is happy with the results of elections in Lebanon, which is fair, but if the results were not exactly like you want, you cannot negate democracy. And I believe that it is possible to have unity government again if the world community gives us the guarantee that it will not put us under siege again. When we debated national unity government, at one point, when I was mediating that, I was promised personally by many ministers of foreign affairs in the world, including Israel, that their unity government will be recognized even if they wouldn't deal with Hamas. That's okay. But when the national unity government was put in place, it was immediately put under siege and embargo. And that cannot happen again. So I believe for the future of peace, for the future of democracy, every person who has good intention has to push and help the creation of a unity government in the Palestinian territory.
Thank you very much. That also was a very clear and compelling answer. We'll go back to the questions of settlements now. Two questions. One is, why do Israelis perceive settlement as being needed for security? How do they believe they enhance Israeli security? That's part one. And part two is that plan for new parks and archaeological digs such as Ir-David. How can that be woven into a two-state solution, or is it just totally incompatible with it? So the first question, why do some Israelis perceive settlements as needed for security? And secondly, how do those archaeological digs and so forth, how will that figure into a two-state solution, or can that?
If you go back to the first slide, the map that Israel had before 67. We had a small country surrounded with Arab countries, and there was a threat from the east that might come Iraqi tanks through Jordan, join together and drive all the way to Jerusalem with nothing to stop them. And then the war starts in the gates of Jerusalem, and 5 minutes or 10 minutes drive from Tel Aviv, war in 48 and the way it turned out, that if we hold to the land in the West Bank, then we can delay the tanks from entering. Of course, today, and the very fact that you have settlement means that you hold the place and that you cannot just, be taking out. And also before the establishment of Israel, the people the civilians who lived in the settlement, in the Israeli community, they are the ones to do the fighting also. But today, I think most Israelis, they know that the existence of settlement is not conducive to security. The opposite, it's a burden to the security of Israel. And the tanks from Iraq is not going to come very soon, and they don't need anymore to go with tanks. They have rockets already. But I think the security issue now is the fact that many Israelis believe that the presence of the IDF in the West Bank makes it harder on the terrorist group to act. And we see that there is a decrease in the terrorist attacks in Israel. So people believe that it's conducive, and I believe that it's true. It is if you have your soldiers and you have the direct control of the population, it's harder for the terrorism to act. However, if we didn't have it, maybe they were less motivated to act. So it's a question. Is the plan, the governmental plan, is possible also with the two-state solution? Such plans can happen, but in the delicate situation in Jerusalem, the fact that every small thing might turn out to be the next round of violence, we cannot allow ourselves to do such blunt, unilateral plans. This is the holy city for so many religions. We have to do it in a very delicate way, and to do it with coordination with Palestinians. And as long as we are occupying, it's almost impossible to say, oh, we will coordinate if everybody is equal. It's not equality under occupation. So the plan is a very, very problematic plan.
Dr. Barghouti, we have a couple of questions that really center around the one-state solution, as it were. One question is, if a two-state solution becomes impossible, what can possibly happen to Israel, to the Palestinians? And the other question was, what would happen if the Palestinians said to the Israelis, okay, we give up, annex the West Bank, annex Gaza, essentially the one-state solution. Is there any talk of that, and what are the possibilities?
I don't give up, usually. I don't know why people should give up. We could ask them to get unified together on the basis of equality, and not on the basis of Israel annexing us, because Israel annexing us means Israeli rules will rule, and since there are different rules for Jewish and non-Jewish people, then we are talking about consolidating an apartheid system. So I still hope there will be a two-state solution for a simple fact, because we don't want this thing to continue for long. Because I personally don't want my daughter to live under occupation or oppression or apartheid as much as I did. I would like her to have a different future. And I don't want Palestinians and Israelis to continue to hurt each other in the middle of this conflict. But if the Israelis insist on preventing a two-state talking about a year maybe, or not more. And if that option vanishes, we have no other alternative but to struggle then and have a one-state solution. But whether it is one state, I personally don't mind one state, two states, fine. Originally, Palestinians wanted one state with democratic rights. It was the international community that kept pressuring us to accept a compromise. Till we accepted the compromise back in 1988, and we said we're accepting that little tiny place called West Bank and Gaza, which is only 23% of the land of historic Palestine. And we're accepting it as a compromise because the United Nations security resolutions were about two states where we would have 45% and not 23%. But we accepted half of what we should have had, hoping that this would be a solution. And it wasn't a solution. The truth is that there are a lot of people in Israel, whether they say it or they don't say it, who believe that the whole of the area should be Jewish. And that we are accidental, that we are there by mistake, and we should be removed. And that is the essence of people like Lieberman, who is advocating ethnic cleansing in the 21st century. But that is racism, and it is totally unacceptable. So whether it is one state or two states, it's fine with us. But you cannot have one state and keep discrimination against Palestinians. This would not work. At the end of the day, I think the entry point to the solution is very simple. If people want to see it, and the entry point is, we are all equal human beings, and Palestinians should be treated as equal human beings, with equal rights and equal duties. So, they asked me in this program of 60 minutes whether it will be one state or two states, and I said something I will repeat today. I said, my heart wants to see two-state solution, but my brain tells me the opposite. Because of what we see, of what you have described, the settlement growth that goes on around the clock. So if you want quicker solution, and if you want quicker solution, and less painful one, let's act together today to stop settlements and do everything we can to have a solution very quickly. Otherwise, we will have to struggle longer and get rid of apartheid anyhow.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to ask a question that you both could respond to. I've got them in my two piles, but I've got the one that really applies to both of you, and whoever would like to take it first is. What possibility, what is the applicability of international human rights declarations for both Israelis and Palestinians, for all of the inhabitants of the region? For example, universal suffrage is one of the 30 articles of the International Human Rights Declaration. Do you see international law playing in on both the questions of settlement, the questions of a true state or one state, a solution, and what is the applicability of relevant international law to these different circumstances that we've been talking about?
Israel is violating the international law, I mean by occupation for sure. However, it's a kind of violation which is now, it's passing, I mean, it's working for 42 years, and I mean, the world is not like, nothing happens to you, so maybe it's not such a violation. No? So I think up until now, the international law was not a real player in the field for Israel. And in recent years, it is starting to have significance. And I don't want to get into all of the legal system in Israel and how it works with the international law, because we have some legal acrobatics that helps us, to be okay. But I think the fact that the this was never too clear to Israel. And I think now we have a chance, at least I want to try to stress this again, that for the Israeli public, for us to be able to convey the message that it's wrong and it's not acceptable, the fact that finally we have a friend in the United States that says that to us, it really helps us to convey the message in the Israeli public. And if I'm to be optimistic, and I have to be optimistic. I'm Israeli, I want to live in Israel, I have to be optimistic, and I seek for the opportunity. We have an opportunity with this government, with this horrible government. I think it's in ways, it's a chance. I mean, first of all, we have opposition in Israel, although it's the Kadima party, nobody knows exactly what they want, but they're not in the government and they're doing the job. I mean, they're opposing what Netanyahu is doing. And the world now is not getting again to the same trap of, but they might now make peace, so maybe we should ease them because they're going to make peace like they say they do. So finally, people here are starting to speak like what they want or what they say is what they need. And I think that the American administration is starting to do that too, is very encouraging. And there is a possibility either that Netanyahu, he might become like Begin and to choose to go for peace because all the world is waiting for this chance. We have the Arab world it's at hand, and or we have Israeli opposition, and again we are seeing the hope that there is an alternative. It is other way. It's not that we're doomed here. We have to have unity of government and to bomb Palestinians because there's no other way to protect ourselves, and that's it. So we can be a little optimistic, I hope.
Mustafa, did you want to add a comment about international law?
Sure. I think international law is applicable and should be applicable. The problem is, like in many other situations, it is not applied. And as was said, Israel is violating international law and many other laws. And the problem here is the double standard. That the standards that are applied to other countries are not applied to Israel. A very obvious example of that, the fact that Israel has 400 nuclear heads. And nobody, they speak about a nuclear head in Iran. Of course, Barack Obama is a smart man. He spoke about making the area free of nuclear weapons. But there is a very clear double standard that Israel has enjoyed for many factors. One factor is history. One factor is what happened to Jewish people during the Holocaust, which is, of course, something that one has to respect. But I don't think that credit is going to last forever, because the double standard is creating very serious problems. And if Israel remains an apartheid, it will face acts of punishment, including possible sanctions. And only then that the balance of forces will change, and then Israel will have to abide by what is called international law and international universal declaration of human rights that everybody has to accept. You see, unfortunately, that's the nature of human history. And I say that and I feel sorry. There wasn't ever a colonial power that stopped being a colonial power except when it reached a point of having to pay a high price for being a colonial power. And so far Israel has afforded to be a colonial power and an apartheid recently because it's not paying a price for that. And I do not advocate violence. I don't like violence. I always was on the side of non-violent approach. And that's why I say in this particular case, the best approach is to punish Israel so that Israel itself would come back to its own mind and stop this crazy approach, which is threatening not only their future, but our future and the future of everybody.
I believe that we are at about the end of the time that we have. I have some announcements to make, but before I make these very important announcements, so stay here, I think we need to thank both of our speakers for a very particularly that the last comment that Mustafa made, which is that seeking a just peace between Israelis and Palestinians is in the best interest of Palestinians and in the best interest of Israelis. The faith of the two peoples are joined, and upholding human rights for all people in the region is the only road to a lasting peace. Now for our brief announcements. First announcement. Oh, it's a bus announcement. Those of you who are taking